I'm welcoming Kathleen Chiassom Downs, who is a lead clinical therapist at the WVU Department of Behavioral Medicine, and she's giving up some of her time to talk to us, talk to you as a student about what it means to be in this kind of position, how she made the decisions of where she's going, some of the things that she experiences in her job. The idea is to really give you an orientation to careers that you may be following in the future. And I noticed Kathleen has she's got a master's of arts degree in counseling, has become a licensed professional counselor. And the ALPS designation you're seeing there means that she's taken a next step and heightened her responsibility to the field by developing going for the training and developing the credential to be a supervisor of people going for their LPC. And the AADC is an addiction certification. I'm right, aren't I, Kathleen?
Yep,
I just
that's
want to
correct.
make sure. Okay. Every time I turn around, I see different kinds of what that
Oh, I know. You
last
can't
one
keep up
means.
with them.
I know. She's also a part-time instructor in our addiction studies minor, and I am going to steal her. She doesn't know it for our program down the road. So, Kathleen, you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi. First of all, Dr. Glenn, thank you so much for this opportunity. I always love being able to talk about the kinds of work I do in this field with the hopes of recruiting as many new folks to help out with this field, because we need so much help. The more the merrier. So I appreciate you taking the time to interview me.
Thank you. And what you might also want to know about her is that she and her husband own a farm, which I think is just absolutely incredible. I can't imagine having that much work to do after my working hours. So
most of it in the beautiful summer months, it's a wonderful break. Right now, when people ask me what we farm, I tell them we just farm mud. Just all day we're farming mud, because that's what it feels like. But I know one day it'll be a beautiful green homestead again.
okay, great. Okay, let's go ahead with some of the questions if I can get my slides to go.
Sure.
All right, tell us a little bit about why you chose to get a degree in counseling.
Sure, great question. So I received my undergraduate degree in psychology here from WVU in 2002, and it was I think the middle of my last year, my senior year, that I started to look at the job market for what was available to me, with an undergrad in psych, and I realized there was not a whole lot available, at least not enough that was going to give me a self-sustaining kind of lifestyle. And at the time, I was working with a mentor. I was working in her research lab, and she kind of sat me down and sort of pseudo interviewed me, try to get at what my interests. And she really was the one that helped me see that I think what I was interested in was a career in counseling. I got into psychology because I think just people are fascinating, how we can be so incredibly similar and so incredibly different, and just how we work and interact in this world. I think people are really fascinating. And more importantly, I love the idea of just being able to be of service to them in some way. And she really got for me that probably I didn't want to go the psychology route, that I wanted to go the counseling route. And I'm, forever grateful to her.
What was for her? What was the difference? Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
What was the difference for her between recommending psychology and counseling? That's an interesting distinction.
Yeah, great question. I think, and particularly the kind of work that she was doing, I think she saw the psychology route to be maybe more of the testing route, or more just kind of very specific, narrow ways that she would be working with patients and or clients, I guess, at the time. And her goal was to stay in academia full time. And at that time, I didn't have any interest in doing that. Okay. I really wanted to be out in the community working.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your job and how you came to be in this role.
Sure. So I have been at Chestnut Ridge Center since the end of 2010. I, at the time, was living out of state and working as an inpatient counselor at an inpatient treatment center. And there was a research study that was taking place through NIDA, funded by NIDA, that was here at Chestnut Ridge. And at the time, research wasn't necessarily a strong interest of mine, but I heard from enough people, if you want to get into an agency, get in on a research study and then stay long enough, and then they'll just kind of keep you around long term, which is exactly what happened. So I came here for what was called the SMART ED study, and it was an early intervention study that we worked on identifying people in the emergency department that potentially had substance abuse issues. And that study lasted about 3 years. And you sort of, as a working on that research study, I just saw patients over here part-time just to kind of earn my keep. And then the closer that we came to the research study ending, I just took on a bunch of patients and groups here so that when the study ended, they didn't have any choice but to keep me around, which they did, and I'm very grateful for. And so I've been working as a therapist here since then. And then just in this last year, I was promoted to lead clinical therapist. And then, as you mentioned, I also teach part-time for your department.
Mm-hmm. So the difference between being a clinical therapist and a lead clinical therapist, what exactly is that?
Yeah, good question. I still my primary role is still mainly clinical work. So I provide individual therapy, family therapy, group therapy. I work primarily in our comprehensive opioid addiction treatment clinic, which is our medication-assisted treatment model clinic. So I do a lot of my therapy work in there. And then in addition to that, I provide supervision for all of the therapists here in the outpatient department. And then I also help with a couple of different research studies and grants that are taking place right now. One of the grants I work on is the STR grant. And please don't ask me what that stands for. But because I don't remember.
I know it's state targeted response because I got some of the money.
That sounds right.
It's a state targeted response to the opioid epidemic.
Yes, that sounds right, and I should know that, and I will write that down. No. So one of the things we do is we go around to different parts of the state, and we help other smaller agencies start up and start running their own medication-assisted treatment clinic. So that's part of the work I do here too.
Great. Tell us a little bit more about Chestnut Ridge and where it sits and what kind of agency. You told us a little bit about the client population you serve, but there's more you can tell us. Be great.
Sure. So Chestnut Ridge Center is part of the WVU Medicine System. It's this lovely antique brick building that sits offset from Ruby Memorial, and it is where the Department of Behavioral Medicine and Psychiatry is housed. And so within our building, there are so many different things going on at once. There, in our outpatient clinic, it's where our team of psychiatrists, psychologists, licensed professional counselors, social workers, and case managers work. And every day there are different specialty clinics taking place. So there's a list of staff here that work specifically with our addiction population. There's a list of staff here that work specifically with our child and adolescent population. With mood disorders, the thought disorders, our memory clinic. Everybody tends to kind of specialize in a certain area here. And then in addition to the outpatient section, on the upstairs floor is our inpatient unit. So there's the dual diagnosis unit, the adult unit, the sort of intensive psychiatric unit, and that stuff takes place upstairs, which is, it sounds silly, but it's really a whole different world. The 2 floors, there's so much I rarely see the staff up there. We just don't interact that much.
Mm-hmm. So the Chestnut Ridge is part of a behavioral medicine department that's part of the WVU Medical Center and Health Sciences Center, right?
That is correct.
Okay, got it. What does your typical day look like? I know that's probably not a typical day if you're a counselor.
There isn't a typical day, and one of sometimes people ask me what I love about my job, and one of the things I love about my job is that I don't have a typical day. Every day really does feel different. I have some days that look similar. Some days I will come in and I only have individual therapy sessions scheduled all day. So all I'll be doing is seeing patients on an individual basis. Some days, maybe I'll see patients in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I'll be running a group therapy session. Some days I am sitting in on interdisciplinary treatment teams meetings with the other staff here. Some days I'm in kind of process meetings, working on some of the grants and research that we're working on. Some days I'm meeting a lot more with the staff here and providing them with supervision and help. So that's what I love about my day, is that it's never the same.
So one of the things that people could think about at this point is if they like a very regimented day, which some mental health counselors have. They're doing private work and they go in and they see counselors for 6 to 8, back to back, or families. And, but if you would like variety, working in a medically based program might be right up your alley, or one associated with a major research project or center.
Yes, absolutely. There's certainly pros to going the private practice route. There's a couple therapists in the past that I've worked with here that have, for all intents and purposes, kind of semi-retired and moved on to the private practice world. And I think they like it because it is regimented. They feel a lot more control over their schedule because they dictate when they want to see patients and don't want to see patients, and they dictate how many they're going to take on. And that for sure has its pros. I would really miss the collaborative effect that takes place here at Chestnut Ridge. In the hallway where my office is, I could open my door right now, and across the hall from me is a social worker's office, and catty corner is a psychologist's office, and 2 doors down is a psychiatrist's office. And I love that part because I'm just surrounded with, frankly, free resources that I get to utilize for me, and then most importantly for my patients. I think I would miss that part of going the private practice route.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Next is, if I can get my slides to actually move. Well, you just told us what you like most about your job is the collab, but is there anything more you want to say about what you like about your job?
Most importantly, what I love about my job is I get to be a part of, I get to be a part of people's individual lives. And it's a real honor for people to come in and give you, share with you their deepest, darkest secrets. Again, I think it's a real privilege. I get to be involved in such emotional intimacy with so many people on a regular basis. And it's just such a cool experience to get to watch people learn things about themselves and grow and try things differently. And then they come back excited to tell you when something that you told them to try out, and maybe they rolled their eyes at you, and then they came back and they said, oh, actually, must know what you're talking about because it worked. Like, that's such a great experience. And again, it's also such an honor when people come in and they've got something going on that they don't get to talk to other people about, but they want to tell you about. And I think that's just wonderful.
How about some of the less positive aspects?
Sure. It's funny. I feel like when people answer this question, they're almost always their first answer is the paperwork, but the paperwork doesn't really bother me. It's a part of the job, and it helps my patients get services and helps me get paid, so I'm fine with that. The least enjoyable parts of my job, on days it's funny. There can be days where I go into the office thinking my day is going to look a certain way, and maybe the weather's not great, so half of my patients cancel on me, and some meetings get canceled. So I just have this free, easy, relaxed day, and I get everything done with time to spare. And then I'll have some days where it seems like everybody that week has had a crisis, and everybody needs a sort of emergency phone call or an emergency session, and there's just not enough hours in the day. And sometimes I'll leave those days thinking, I swear it was just 9 a.m. and now it's 6 p.m. How did that happen? And I think working in this state, we're faced on a regular basis with the fact that this is a state that is just exhausted with resources. We do not have enough resources. We do not have enough staff in this field. We do not have enough money to help all the people in the state that need that. And most of the time I can sort of stay detached from that and stay okay. But every once in a while that part gets frustrating.
It can feel overwhelming. Yeah.
It can feel overwhelming for sure. And that is where self-care is vital, to make sure that you're taking care of yourself all the time, so that feeling of being overwhelmed doesn't become too overwhelming.
Self-care is one of my favorite discussions with students. Can you give some ideas of what you do or you recommend to other people to do?
Sure. So for myself and with my patients and the people I supervise, really the kind of holistic approaches to self-care. So diet, exercise, and sleep are the 3 main things I want to talk with folks about. And I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, making sure I'm regularly nourishing my body and hydrating my body with water and not my 5th Red Bull of the day. Make sure I'm regularly getting my heart rate up with exercise, because that's going to help me sleep better. And then if I'm sleeping better, I'm just going to feel better the next day. So that's really big. I know for me, you guys maybe have talked in class about HALT. I feel like I'm teaching my patients about HALT probably once a week. And that stands for, not letting ourselves get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So that I think is a really helpful gauge for people of where are you at with your self-care. And also sometimes I'll tell kind of up and coming counselors, sometimes an occupational hazard of this job, you're around people all day. You have people emoting at you all day. You're talking a lot to people all day. a side effect of that is then in my downtime, I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time with people. I don't want to go where there's crowds. I don't want to have to go and make small talk for 2 hours at some party. So the benefit for me at the farm is I go home and I get to hang out with animals that probably aren't going to talk to me. The pigs do. Sometimes they get a little attitude, but yeah.
I think we share that one in common. I'm
Yeah.
naturally an introvert, which most people don't. I
Yeah.
say I'm a socially adept introvert, but I just
Oh,
need
I
to
love that.
recharge my batteries with my dog and my cats. And
Oh, and your dog is the cutest.
I know she's a doll baby. She's standing right here trying to get attention. So, okay. Um, I'm trying to. How do you feel the counseling degree you got prepared you to work for what you're doing right now?
Oh, great question. I I really loved the program I was in, and I was in the counseling program from 2002 to 2004. I loved how much hands-on work we did, how much role playing, how much really repetition of, therapeutic techniques and styles that we really focused on. I felt like I felt very prepared when I went out into the quote unquote real world, and started doing therapy on my own without knowing there was a tape recorder nearby that, Dr. Jacobs was going to listen to later, and, knowing there wasn't somebody on the other side of the mirror watching me. I felt very prepared with that. And I really like the theories that I learned about in school. And again, how much we talked about those and how much those theories were integrated into our other classes. I loved that.
Great. Now, I went through the plethora of initials behind your name. What kinds of additional training or certificate? Tell us a little bit about how you chose what you decided to get and how you end up using it.
Sure. So it's really embarrassing. It's my life, but I don't remember the years. At some point, it was just a couple of years after. So I got out of grad school, had my provisional license. I'm fairly certain it was 2 or 3 years after that I got my LPC, and I initially actually first got it in North Carolina, so I practiced there. And when I came back to West Virginia, I then worked on and decided to get my supervision certification because I feel like supervision is such a collaborative approach. And I remember learning so much from my supervisors, but then also being able to teach them some things. And I had sort of already done some pseudo supervision at my job previous to that. So that's what led me to decide to get that certification. And that's really, partly that's helped me, I think, get my promotion here and be able to work with other clinicians in different aspects here at Chestnut Ridge. And then
The
I think
addictions.
it was five. Yeah, I think it was 5 years ago. I feel like the older I get, I'll think, oh, it's just last year. But no, I guess that was 5 or 6 years ago. I had been working in the addictions field for close to 10 years at that point. And I thought I really wanted something to represent all the work I had done. And also at that point, we were starting to learn that there were certain agencies and organizations in the state that specifically wanted their clients to be seen with somebody with a addiction certification.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the West Virginia Restore is the nursing monitoring program in the state. So if you're a nurse that self-identifies as having a substance use disorder, or if maybe you get in trouble on the job, they sort of send you to this program and you're a part of this monitoring program for about 5 years. And during that time, you have to be seen by a clinician who has their AADC in order to receive therapy. So that was sort of an incentive to get that certification.
Well, that makes sense. Now, did I know that I've talked to some of my graduates who have that certification here in West Virginia, and they found that the master's degree itself allowed them to get that certification without a lot of additional, maybe some additional continuing education courses or something like that.
Yeah, you are correct. If you have a master's degree, that will give you the vast majority of the chunk of the education hours you need to receive that certification. You do need additional work experience out in the field, and since this is being recorded, I don't want to go on record to say how many hours it is, but it's roughly, I think it's about a couple of years in the field before you can get it. But yes, if you have your master's and you plan on doing anything with addictions, I'd strongly, encourage folks to get that certification.
Okay, when you got your license in North Carolina and then came back to West Virginia, or came to West Virginia. I'm not sure where you actually were from. Now that I think about it.
Yes, it was West Virginia. I came back to West Virginia. You were correct.
Okay. I don't know why. The Was it a problem to, because licensure is state specific? Did you have
Sure.
difficulty coming back and getting your LPC
I had a
here?
little difficulty. I wouldn't call it a problem. I think everything's an opportunity, but I did when I came back in 2010, the licensure requirements had changed slightly, and that they were requiring 2 graduate courses that weren't even offered when I was in grad school. I think it was a human development course and an abnormal course. I had taken both of those in an undergraduate level, but not a graduate level. So when I came back, I just had to take those 2 courses from WVU. And thankfully, my job here was really supportive of that. So I think one I took online, and one I traveled over on the BRT once a week for a semester, and actually had a lot of fun. It's been a while since I've been at school, so I had fun doing that. So those are the only 2 issues that presented any kind of problem when I was getting my licensure. When I was in North Carolina, I was allowed to be supervised by someone with a social work degree in order to obtain my supervision hours to get my license. That's not the case in West Virginia, for good reason. One of the reasons I'd had to wait to get my LPC license is because when I had graduated school in Morgantown, I then moved to Canaan Valley, and there were no ALPS in a remote area that didn't have like a couple-year waiting list in order for me to work on my supervision to get my license. So I guess if I could go back, there was another reason I decided to get my ALPS, is I wanted to be able to give back to this community. I think the counselors in West Virginia, we need to stick together and try to help each other as much as possible. So for clinicians coming out and spending some time in the field, I always encourage them also to get their ALPS, because it's one way to be able to provide supervision back to folks.
Perfect. Couldn't have, no one, I don't think I've ever heard it said quite so well. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Are you involved in any professional organizations?
I think I just belong to the West Virginia Counseling Association, and that's it. It's funny, I don't have a lot of folks in my life professionally who seem to really, that they talk a lot about the organizations that they're part of, and that they really feel like it sort of makes a difference in their career. So I think I've just never put the effort into researching into if there's any that I really want to be a part of.
Yeah, when I was a counselor so long ago that I can't even get my license in West Virginia. Well, I could if I really worked on it, but
yeah,
we were very linked into national and state organizations. It became because of me being a rehab counselor and working in a state agency that really pushed that kind of membership for their staff. But I've noticed less and less of that in private or public practice.
Yeah.
That the good thing about some of the associations, you can actually get your at least for students, and I think maybe for faculty, it's reduced malpractice insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, I know they provide support if you have some ethical dilemmas, or kind of if there's any legal situations that pop up with patients.
And they're also just advocating for us on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Legislators and different groups. So that always, I keep having to remind myself that sometimes my membership doesn't have to exactly be something I'm getting, although I have enjoyed some of the American Mental Health Counseling Association I joined once we combined the dual program. And they send out some good articles and updates from other clinicians in the field. And it's, again.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of nice.
Maybe I'll check them out.
So let's go on. Can you describe an ethical dilemma that you have addressed in your work?
Sure. I'm trying to
I create an ethical dilemma, and you telling a story without revealing who the person is.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, I'll try very hard not to do that. What would probably what seems like a more regular basis that pops up is it's not necessarily a huge dilemma, but patients often sort of will try to get a hold of me on social media, or they'll look you up on social media or try to friend you. Or the other issue is, in some respects, Morgantown, it's at least in West Virginia respects, Morgantown is a big town. In this community, it's a small town. So inevitably I'm realizing that I'm, mutual friends with a patient's sister, or with a patient's friend or mom or something like that. That happens on a probably somewhat frequent basis, and so that's a reminder to regularly talk with your patients just about rules with social media and technology. I always let my patients know that I cannot and will not connect with them on social media. If they send me a friend request, I'm going to deny that. I'm not going to search for them on social media. I know that I've heard of clinicians doing that in the past. They thought maybe a patient was lying to them about whether they were sober or not, so they'll search up their profile and see if they can look at it. And I think that's an invasion of privacy. So I'll always let them know that I'm not going to search for them on social media. I'll ask for them to not do that. I'll ask for them to not contact me. If I figure out that I sort of know this person, mom or sister, whatever, through social media, I'll just make sure to bring that up in a session and, remind them, I'm never going to tell your so-and-so how I know you or that I know you. And we'll just try to do what we can to avoid each other in that context.
That's good. I'm amazed at how small Morgantown is sometimes. I lived in
Oh,
D.C.
yeah.
for 16 years and I was shocked one day at a mall when I actually saw somebody I knew, because it just doesn't happen. And,
Oh, sure.
and here, I was standing in line at Target and some woman in front of me turned around and said, I applied for your program and you didn't accept me. You want to tell me why? And I'm looking at her like, no idea who you are. Do you
Oh,
know how
how
many people
awkward.
me? I know.
I would have pointed out maybe how you're addressing the situation is partly why I didn't hire you.
That's exactly what I've said. I give people an example. If you want to know why we might not accept somebody, here's an example. Yeah.
Right.
It threw me because I'm sitting there
You're
going,
not used to it.
I'm in line at Target. I'm not thinking about my job.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I am inevitably running into patients. It's not, when I've just left work and I look nice and my hair's fixed and I'm looking all professional. No, I run into them and their family when I have just left a hot yoga session and I've got half of my hair coming out of a hat and I know I don't smell very good and I look red faced and I'm meeting this patient's family and I'm sure they're thinking, you pay this lady for life advice? I don't know.
That's funny.
I know.
That's so funny. So tell me about laws that you have to be knowledgeable about in your day to day. Just some of them. You don't have to go through all of them, but
Sure. HIPAA. That's a huge one here. I mean, obviously in the field of counseling and particularly in this medical practice. So we're talking about HIPAA regularly. I am, constantly paying attention to and connecting back with my, the ethical standards that I need to follow through our counseling standards. Those are probably the main ones that pop up. The idea of we are a mandated reporter if we, believe there's any potential child abuse, et cetera, taking place. So that is a law I got to pay attention to on a regular basis. And I can't think of any. No, there's none others that are off the top of my head.
I do have a question for you because sometimes I know the way you're able to operate in your job can be dictated by the funding stream that is attached. But you
Sure.
talked about the STR, it's either state targeted response or state training response. I can't remember now.
When you said targeted, that felt good. So I'm pretty sure it's that.
Okay. They mentioned something called COAT, COAT, as it related to treatment. What is that?
Yeah, so COAT is our, it stands for Comprehensive Opioid Addiction Treatment. And that is what our medication assisted treatment clinic is called. And we essentially sort of formalized it as a model. And that is the model that we are then now taking to other places in the state to help them open up their clinic. So that funding that we get through that allows us to help agencies hire on new psychiatrists and new therapists and case managers. That funding isn't necessarily given to the patients, so the patients can't come in and get free services that way. But we're starting up these clinics so that patients with state insurance, as well as any other kind of insurance, can come in and receive those services.
So when they talk about hub and spokes, you're the hub and they're the spokes?
We
got
are
into
the
this?
yeah, good question. We are, I don't know if we're like the main, I think we're sort of the main mothership hub. And then the first year of the grant, which took place last year, we went to 3 or 4 different sites in the state and helped them either open up or already sort of get their current agency up to date with our COAT model. And those were hubs. And then the second year of the grant, we've been helping those hubs do the same thing, go and seek out their own agencies that they want to help start up this COAT model in, and those are called the spokes.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I just, to
It's
be honest,
confusing for sure.
well, I tried to look it up online when I saw it, of course, because
Yeah.
Google everything, and all I got
Oh,
lost.
sure.
All I did was get lost in Nordstrom's coat section. So honestly, I
Oh,
couldn't
hashtag
find
been
anything
there.
about it. I couldn't find anything about it. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Um, you've talked a little bit about being able to look outside your office and see the different people that you get to work with. Can you describe some
Mhm.
of the relationships you have with these people and how you work as an interdisciplinary treatment team?
Sure. I'm so grateful to be here. I have worked in places in the past where sometimes my voice as a therapist was valued and sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes maybe it was a little discredited. And here I have always felt that my role as the therapist for the patient, that my opinion is just as valid, if not sometimes even more so than some of the medical professionals I work with.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in our coach clinic, our medication assisted treatment clinic, on the day that we have a group therapy session, we always meet as an interdisciplinary team prior to that. So it's myself, it's the prescribing psychiatrist, it's the case manager, and it's the medical assistant. And we're, talking about the patients in the group, and what popped up in group last time, anything has popped up, since then. And, we're all in there kind of giving our 2 cents and what we experience with the patient and what we know what's going on. And that's a room where I feel my voice is always just as much heard of, if not more than the doctors. And I feel the same for the case manager and the medical assistant too, that, what they have to share is just as vital.
That's good to know. It's amazing how our perspectives and um, are very different given the kind of training we've had as well as
Mm-hmm.
the task that that we do with people. It's very, very different.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be different. Sometimes I will meet new clinicians who are sort of early on in their career, and they will come into those kind of meetings, with, and and rightfully so, they're kind of wearing some insecurity because they're just new to it, and they sort of will go into that meeting thinking, well, my voice isn't as vital, or what I have to say isn't as important because I don't know the stuff that the doctor has. Frankly, that's just not helpful. And people are going to pick up on, if we feel like we're not supposed to be in the meeting, people may start treating us like we're not supposed to be in there in the meeting. So
Yeah,
we as counselors, it's really important for us to appreciate our role in there and why we have a specialized connection with that patient, and that our voice is just as important. We will teach people how to treat us as counselors.
good one. How you treat other people can always
Yep.
come back to help you or haunt you. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. So, have you talked about the research that you've been involved with, which is not always doesn't always happen for counselors that they get a chance to do that.
Yeah, you're right. And and to be honest, that when I came back to West Virginia, I came in on the SMART ED study, which stood for screening, motivational interviewing, and referring to treatment. Um, and research was not really something I was really interested in when I was in school. I worked in a couple, I think, of research projects when I was in college, essentially because I felt like it just padded my resume and helped me give a little bit of experience. But at the time, I didn't think it was something I wanted to do long term. And when I worked out in community agencies, we just weren't involved in it. But I knew if I agreed to take part in this research project here at Chestnut Ridge, that would be my way in, that would be my foot in the door to be able to stay here long term. And it was a fantastic experience, and I got to do therapy as a part of this research study. So I always encourage counselors, don't let the word research sort of turn you off from an opportunity. And then since being here, because I'm around, because I am in an academic setting where there's a lot of research that takes place, kind of kept my ears open from time to time and try to decide if I wanted to learn something from it. So a couple of years ago, I ended up sort of signing up for and running my own research study. It was just a small pilot study to see if yoga could be a helpful sort of supplemental intervention for folks with opioid use disorder. So I ended up running that study myself with the help of, my colleagues here. And it was a great experience, and I learned a lot from it.
What did you learn?
So we learned that yoga really helps with perceived stress with patients. We had such a small population number that if we had had a larger number, we hypothesized that it would also help with cravings. But we just had such a small number, we weren't able to determine that. And so my hope is to do another study on a bigger scale sometime in the next couple of years.
Great.
Yeah.
Let me know when you do that and what you find out, because it's
I will.
kind of complementary practices I find to be vital to the effort of truly helping people recover. And
absolutely. And that's what I love. If I think back to, I feel like what the field of addiction and recovery was like in the 80s and 90s, it used to just be this one size fits all. Like, your only option is abstinence, your only option is go to meetings, and if you can't make that work, well, then you must not really want to be sober. And that's crazy. We don't do that for any other illnesses or disorders on there, right? There's 47 opportunities to give people treatment for depression and cancer and high blood pressure and everything. So I want the same thing for our folks with substance use disorders. Maybe you want to go to meetings. Maybe you want to come see me for yoga therapy. Maybe you want to go try this or that. Like, let's let folks let's just give them as many opportunities as possible.
Mm-hmm. Good one. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of, what groups of, as it relates to culture and diversity, if you're working mostly with West Virginians, I say sometimes that can be a very, there's a lot of commonality in our culture and not a lot of diversity sometimes. Okay.
That is correct. There's not a ton of diversity in my caseload. I would say the vast majority of my caseload runs on the lower end of the socioeconomic status. The majority of them have state insurance, and the majority of them live in rural areas. A handful of them are here in Morgantown, but most of them travel to come here, and most of them are Caucasian. That was I loved my experience in the counseling department when I was getting my degree here, through no fault of their own, but just simply geographically, and the experience I got, like in my practicum and my internship, it was again also limited in terms of diversity.
Can't change a lot. I remember
no, you can't.
Dean saying I can do a lot, but I can't cut the mountaintops off. Well, in
right.
some parts of the state, but the hills
right.
off for access. But to allow people to access everything, sometimes you're just limited by what you have available.
Yeah, which is okay. Then you get, you gain a lot of specialty in this population.
Yes, and can always gain I always talk to people about the fact that getting a master's degree does not mean you've mastered this profession.
I still haven't.
Yeah, I always tell people I might make a decent counselor now. I'm not really sure.
right.
So you've talked a lot about advocating for clinicians to become ALPs because of the lack of availability for such things in a rural state like West Virginia. What other advocacy activities have you been involved in or have promoted?
Oh, good question. Anytime I get a chance to talk about working with patients with substance use disorder, I will, whether it's something formal, like being interviewed for a graduate class, whether it's something informal, like my friends are throwing a gathering and somebody made a snide comment about somebody with an addiction, and I jump right in and whip out my soapbox. In terms of formal advocacy, I spent a couple of years helping run a chapter here in town that was for veterans, connecting veterans and civilians in the community with physical exercise. So I did that for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. But that was also at the time that our farm kind of took off and running. And so the majority of my free time is now spent on the farm. So in terms of extra, time outside the office, I just don't have it anymore. Well, I'll rephrase that. I choose not to use it in that direction because my home needs me more.
Sounds good to me. Well, it sounds like you're doing enough on the job, to be honest with you. So is there anything else you'd like to say to the students that are in this class?
First of all, your professor, Dr. Glenn, is awesome. and also just, I appreciate anybody being willing to consider to, give of themselves their time and their effort and their heart into this field because it's needed. So I appreciate them.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I'm going to, when I turn off the recording, I'll turn off this.
Okay.
Are you close to a phone right now?
I am.
Are you cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a quick call right after this, okay?
Okay, sure, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for your
Okay.
time.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you too.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye-bye.